Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Tuesday morning weekly webinar on outdoor adventure marketing. I just want to make sure that the audio is working, so if you can hear my audio, maybe just type in the live chat. Just let me know that you're able to hear it, if you wouldn't mind giving me a little heads up. Great. Thank you, Mark. Good to see you, Mark, and Walter, good to see you as well. So happy to have you guys on board and the other participants. Today we're going to be talking about can't miss strategies when advertising to millennials. Millennials are a generation that get a lot of heat, and they do primarily because there's a little bit of a disconnect between the generations leading them and the way they like to communicate. So today we're going to bridge some of those gaps and talk about what we're seeing in the digital marketing world that are working really well for the millennials. If you haven't joined us before, we are Outdoor Adventure Marketing. We're a lead generation company for outdoor adventure companies. We're a digital agency that started in 2009. We have 11 full-time in-house staff, and we're in Tempe, Arizona. And we drive prospects to your adventure tour business. My name is Adam Arkfeld. I founded Paracore in 2009. I have a very strong technical background. We used to do development. Now we do just digital marketing. On the personal side, I am a cold brew enthusiast. That's coffee, not beer, and a husband and father. And there's a photo of my daughter Macy, which I just like having because, you know, dads like photos of their daughters. All right, so let's jump right into it. We're going to keep this at about 20 minutes and leave a little room at the end for questions, and we will get started. The very first question is, why do millennials actually matter? It's estimated that they're going to spend about $200 billion in 2017. They are not as young as they seem, and they are definitely penetrating the market from a commerce perspective. They're buying experiences over items, which is great news for anyone in the outdoor adventure market industry. And they also communicate quite a bit differently than other generations, which we're going to talk about. They care about different things like your brand. So when we talk about the experiences, I like to mention Airbnb. Airbnb, in addition to it just being convenient and a number of things like that, they also, it's a different type of authentic user experience when someone is visiting a location and they're staying in someone's home. So one of the main benefits of Airbnb is the experience of people staying in another home, getting that authentic environment, and really feeling more connected to the location they're visiting. Another example is Tom's, the one-for-one. For every pair of shoes you buy, that's Tom's brand, they donate a pair. So again, the authenticity of that brand is really, really, really strong. There's a great story behind them, and people love that. So millennials are spending a ton of money. They're a major player in the market, and they have very specific preferences that are a little bit different than previous generations. A millennial is someone who was born around 1984, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later. There's really no definitive age range here, and ending at the latest maybe around 2000. So those people would be about 17 years old. There are approximately 76 million members in this group, and at 33 years old or maybe a little bit older, they're definitely starting to grow their families. They have kids and real jobs and starting to develop real buying power. As a side note, Zennial was recently introduced, 1977 to 1983. So that group is segmented. And historically, a lot of the numbers go back to the late 70s, but I think they're starting to maybe carve that out because that generation is right on the cusp of the millennial generation. So let's talk about what makes millennials different. They have a few values that are very distinct to their generation. Speed, getting quick responses, and convenience, easy to buy from. And a prime example of that is Amazon Prime. The speed and convenience of not having to go anywhere really, really, really speaks to that millennial market. As I mentioned earlier, they're much more interested in experiences over items, and they're consuming an insane amount of content on social. They're spending 78% of millennials spend over 2 hours on texting, browsing, on Facebook, just basically over 2 hours a day just on their phone, doing whatever. So, this image down here at the bottom, while it's a little bit extreme, is actually not that far from the truth. If you look at groups of people hanging out, they're just on their phones. It's constant. So that mobile experience and being available on mobile and being connected to a millennial's device is really an important aspect of what they're looking for in a way that they communicate. They are also very interested in authenticity, stories, and brands. They really want to know what's behind a brand, why the brand exists, what is that brand doing for the greater good of humanity, how authentic is that brand, is it corporate America, those types of things. So, a lot of storytelling and conveying those messages are really important to the millennial market. Knowing those values that are important to millennials, there is oftentimes a breakdown in marketing. And we're going to talk specifically about digital marketing because that's what we focus on. And some of the biggest areas that are breaking down are the reliance upon phone calls and basically leaving voicemails, returning voicemails. Basically communicating verbally on a phone is a very big challenge. Millennials don't respond to voicemails. They don't leave voicemails. If you're a parent and you have a kid who's in teens or early 20s, those kids probably are not returning your voicemails and probably not leaving them either. From a speed perspective and convenience, contact forms, basically submitting that. If you're not responding very, very, very quickly, you're probably going to lose that consumer. They want something very quick, and a lot of times if you're responding a day later or 2 days later to a contact form, that's far too long. A lot of brands are very impersonal. They don't really have any sort of story, or they're not communicating the story. And if a millennial does not understand what a brand stands for and doesn't feel like they're connected to that brand, they're going to have a hard time getting excited about it. And once they do connect with a brand that's in your market, they're definitely going to move in that direction. So today we're going to talk about 5 different tactics that you can use to speak to the millennial generation, which is a little bit different, actually a lot different than some of the more traditional marketing tactics. All right, tactic number 1 is incorporating texting into your marketing. I was mentioning before that millennials are not leaving voicemails, they're not returning voicemails, they don't even like talking on the phone. So when you're receiving leads or information is coming in inbound, incorporating texting with those inbound inquiries is really important. It reduces the amount of friction for that consumer. It makes it a lot easier to communicate for them. They're already texting a ton, so it's very convenient. And you're basically communicating where they communicate. People are sending hundreds and hundreds of text messages per day. So to be involved in that communication and that environment where they're texting is really important. Not only that, when you text them, they're actually notified on their phone in a different way than any other type of communication, except for maybe a phone call, which they're not going to answer. But it's not an email, it's not a notification on an app. It's actually a text message that's going to go to their lock screen, and they're going to see the message from you. So the strength of a text message is very, very prominent. This screenshot here is an example of the CallRail phone call interface that we use, which allows you to actually have text communication threads through CallRail if you just want to have a text conversation. So that protects your phone number. You don't need to be using your personal device. It's a web interface. We talk about this more on the last webinar that we just did, which is using call tracking services to really enhance your marketing. But this is one tactic that we talked about there that's really, really important and really strong. Tactic number 2 is Facebook Messenger. And this again kind of rolls into that instant communication with your consumers. So people want to respond to messages on Facebook in real time, and they want you to respond to them in real time. So one way that you can do that is making sure that you're responding on your just personal Facebook page if people are inquiring, but also potentially running messenger ads where when someone sees an ad, and you can see this as an example here in the bottom right, it has a blue circle around it, but this red square is basically showing the Contact Us button. When someone hits that Contact Us button, it actually opens this chat interface, which is Facebook Messenger, so that you as a business can chat with these people. So the convenience and real-time aspect of that really helps reduce the friction from a marketing and communication perspective. Again, I mean, almost what we're trying to do in these last two instances is say, all right, people aren't really calling and talking as much, at least from a millennial perspective, so where are they communicating? And these are the areas that they actually are communicating. The third tactic is creating a presence on YouTube. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, and millennials are consuming an incredible amount of video content. When people are consuming that content, there are ads all around them. In this screenshot you can see here, this is just a regular video, but before the videos you can show an ad and they can't skip it for 5 seconds. So even if someone doesn't watch the entire ad and they skip it right away, they do get a little bit of increased brand awareness when you're in another environment that's very, very high on the content consumption spectrum that allows people to really engage with your brand in a different way, and videos being very, very, very strong. Millennials love the video content. They don't like reading as much. They've grown up in an environment where YouTube is extremely prevalent. It being the second largest search engine in the world is mind-blowing, and there are a lot of different ways you can hit people in the YouTube environment without really pushing your message too hard, but also just staying in front of them. So creating a presence on YouTube is outstanding, a really good way to get in front of that millennial market, whether it be through retargeting or just traditional, just building out a strong channel with a lot of content. Tactic number 4 leans into the conversation again about millennials being on their phones. So if your website is not 100% mobile friendly and it's not very easy to interact with your website on a mobile device, you're really doing a disservice to that market and also just to your business in general. They're consuming nearly all of their content on mobile. In many cases, they're not sitting at a desk researching at work. A lot of them are not researching on laptops at home. They're spending over 2 hours a day on their device just browsing and doing whatever. I'm sure there are metrics that even have that number higher. And the websites must be really clean, easy to navigate. And if you have phone numbers or have calls to action, make sure those are click to call. So if you have a phone number on a website and someone's on their device and they click the phone number and it doesn't call you, it doesn't pull up the dialer, you're basically telling that consumer, you need to memorize this phone number, go over to your dialing pad, put in the phone number, and then call us separately on your own and take all of those steps and don't miss a single number, instead of just giving them the click-to-call option where they can just click the phone number and call you right away. So down here at the bottom, we have a couple different examples of a mobile-friendly website. This is just, I want to illustrate the simplicity of being able to read this, the simplicity of being able to navigate. Making the website very, very mobile optimized is critical for the millennials and people in general, but really as this millennial market gets older and they start really interacting with your businesses even more, this is going to be the first place they go is on their mobile device. The fifth tactic is really about your brand and being able to tell your story to consumers so that they actually like your brand and they're not just coming and buying an experience or buying a tour, but there's really something behind it. And this really relates to authentic stories, and I found that coffee shops are doing something like this really well, where they're telling this story about how they're sourcing their coffee and what parts of the world and what regions. And so this is a screenshot from Corvus Coffee. And this says, "Goodbye Rwanda, wow, what an experience." They have a photo of Rwanda where they're actually getting the coffee. And that sort of behind the scenes, this isn't a picture of their coffee shop. It's not a fancy picture of a latte. It's not anything related to the actual end product. This is all behind the scenes. So in the case of a tour company, it could be that you're showing how you're finding new routes and you're out exploring a new route, or you're looking at different areas that you want to take people, or you're even going over like the training and safety that you pitch so hard to your consumers, or you talk about the different types of vehicles and just really giving kind of behind the scenes information to someone that's just exploring your company and wants to know a little bit more about what they're going to get. if they can see that type of content and messaging, then they'll feel really good when they hire you and they spend $750,000 for a day's trip doing whatever they're doing. So that's incredibly powerful. Use video as much as you can to deliver those messages. Be very consistent about delivering them regularly, and push that information out on social channels. Instagram is incredibly powerful right now for the millennial market. YouTube is great for videos. Facebook, a little bit less maybe for millennials, but still very active there. But make sure you're active on all the social channels, or pick a couple social channels just to really focus on and make those your one brand, base camp, so that when people are looking for you, they find that channel and then they can explore you more there. As far as how to get started, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of things to do, a lot of building a brand or setting up the call, the text messaging, whatever the case may be. And we always say, just focus on one strategy at a time. Do one strategy per quarter. Basically say for the next 3 months, we're just going to make sure we really get our text messaging plan down. And maybe at the end of the quarter, we decide that's not really working. We're not converting people on text messages. And then maybe move into, all right, we're going to start telling our story on social better. So test and perfect that strategy, and then move on to the next strategy with either positive results or negative results. When it comes to social channels, a lot of people make the mistake of tackling all of the social channels at one time. And we highly, highly, highly recommend just doing one social channel at a time and doing that one social channel really well. And then if you feel like you have that stabilized in the base, then maybe move on to another. So if Instagram is where your market lives, or Snapchat, or whatever the case may be, really push your brand strongly there. And just really focus all of your energy, and basically ignore the other channels until you decide, you know what, I want to, I feel like we're good in this channel and I want to move on. So, there's the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I didn't realize how depressing this saying was until I was looking for images of elephants being eaten one bite at a time, and this was my favorite sad elephant. So we don't condone eating elephants, but it does make sense if you did have to eat an elephant, one bite at a time would work. All right, so what's the key takeaway? Millennials buy differently than older generations, so adapt for them. There are 5 strategies that we talked about today to reach them and resonate with the millennial market. One is incorporating text messaging. The voicemails are dead, and don't try and push it. Don't be surprised when you're leaving voicemails and no one responds to you, and don't be surprised when people call you and they don't leave voicemails. It just doesn't really happen anymore. 2, communicate on Facebook Messenger. Just another good example of a place that those millennials are spending time. So, spend time there with them. Run ads through Facebook Messenger. Use YouTube for advertising efforts. Video content consumption is incredibly high right now. So hit them with retargeting ads. Build out your YouTube channel with a lot of videos with behind-the-scenes stuff, those types of things. Again, really give you that behind-the-scenes. Do everything mobile versus desktop. Everything you're building, everything you're looking at, start mobile. Build landing pages mobile first. Build websites mobile first. Think about what the experience is like on a mobile. If you're just reviewing your information on a desktop, you're really missing the experience of 60, 75% of your consumers, because most of them are finding you on mobile the first time. And then number 5, build an authentic brand. Give behind-the-scenes insight to the people that are going to be paying you money. And a lot of times that authenticity really just comes from showing them the behind-the-scenes. And you have to give a concerted effort. You have to be intentional about it. But it doesn't have to be all that creative or exciting. It just has to be, hey, this is what we do for our safety check every day. Hey, this is what we do for, this is someone on their first skydiving trip. So, we're going to show that. Whatever the case may be, just be real. There's a culture at every single company, and a lot of times that culture just isn't really communicated. So that's a really important one. That's a big one, but using social and using kind of that authentic behind the scenes is how you can push that one forward. So again, we are Outdoor Adventure Marketing. We specialize in lead generation for outdoor adventure companies. We do ATV tours, snowmobiling, zip lining, segways, jet skis, all those types of things. The next webinar we're going to have is 6 Facebook ad features you didn't know existed. So Facebook ads are changing constantly, literally every single day. So we're going to talk about 6 ad features that you just maybe didn't know existed that could help you out on Facebook advertising platform. So now we like to open up for questions. We did receive a couple of questions, and so I'll just kind of start going through those. If you do have any and you want to throw them in the chat, some additional, then please throw them up there, and I will be sure to address as they come in. One I heard is how does Instagram fit into these tactics? Instagram really fits into the social brand building tactic the most, I would say. You do run ads in Instagram, and we run ads quite often from a retargeting perspective. But the Instagram market definitely speaks to the millennial generation quite a bit more than a market like Facebook to some degree, or even some of the Twitter maybe. But Instagram is a really, really strong channel that we recommend using because it's so visual. Every single post has a photo or a carousel or a video, also has the stories. Instagram is really good for building that brand and giving behind the scenes, and people really love consuming that imagery. As far as Facebook goes, Facebook is not as strong with the younger generation, probably leading up to early 20s. So there is an aspect of millennials that are not using Facebook as much anymore. However, as millennials are getting older, having families, maturing, kind of getting into those older ages, Facebook is a really good environment for families to keep in touch, and it's almost more like responsible social media. So I will say that there are other social channels that are stronger for millennials, but Facebook does hit a good portion of those, especially when you get into that like Zennial gray area. And Facebook, so just know that Facebook is probably not the #1 ideal market for millennials. Instagram is a lot better, but Facebook has way more features than a lot of the other platforms. And just one more question. I've been in business for over 20 years and struggle with social media. Where would be a good place to start? I think a good place to start is just starting to engage with social media. If you're not able to incorporate it into your life, then it's going to be very hard for you to give direction to someone else and have a good idea of what's actually happening. So when people tell me they're not very involved in social media and what do, you can outsource it and you can tell someone to run it, but you don't really understand the nuances of how it works, and there's a bit of a disconnect there. So start with one channel and just start off by perusing and seeing what people are doing, and then start actually posting things and start engaging, start commenting, whatever the case may be. So if you're not comfortable on social media, I would say just dive in and try and start engaging. Make it like a 60-day, 90-day goal, and then go from there. It doesn't mean you have to be on there for the rest of your life, but it is important for you to understand how social media works and the power of influencers and commenting and likes and sharing. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very hard for you to guide a strategy as an owner without really knowing how it works. Okay, that wraps it up for today. Thank you all for joining. Again, we are Outdoor Adventure Marketing. Give us a shout if you need anything outdoor adventure related. And then next week we'll be talking about Facebook ad features that you did not know existed. Have a great Tuesday and great rest of your week, and thanks again.